Good morning. I'm Gary DeWaal, and this is Bridging the Week for August 14th to 18th, and today is August 21st, 2017. A non-U.S. based commodities firm that allegedly tried to square up its books at month end by placing matched buys and sells on a U.S. futures exchange was charged with wash trading by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. At the time, on or after first notice day in the relevant delivery month, the firm was precluded from transferring trades through book entry transfers because of exchange rules. Additionally, last month, an organization renowned for drafting model state laws approved a statutory framework for state regulation of persons engaged in a virtual currency business. This week is my last full week before a week of holiday, not to mention the big solar eclipse. So I get ready for a busy week for sure. Let's get started. Cooper Sugar Trading, ABV, and a Reuben Corporation that engages in the import and export of sugar and related hedging activities consented to a fine of $300,000 US to resolve allegations by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission that it engaged in prohibited wash sales on quote-unquote multiple occasions from April 2013 through September 2014. According to the CFTC, these transactions allegedly involve sugar number 11 futures contracts traded on ICE Futures US. The CFTC claimed that Cooper Sugar engaged in these prohibited transactions to transfer positions between various accounts owned by the firm to satisfy its month-end quote-unquote book squaring needs. Ordinarily, the firm would effectuate its transfers through back-office transactions as permitted by exchange rules, said the CFTC. However, when the firm was prohibited from making such transfers by IFIS rules on or after first notice day, it would effectuate the transfers by placing orders for equal and opposite positions, quote-unquote, in a riskless fashion in the marketplace, noted the Commission. On IFIS, traders may transfer positions between accounts where no change in beneficial ownership is involved and under certain other limited circumstances. However, transfer trades that offset positions in the spot month may not occur on or after the first notice day of the delivery month. Wash trades on IFIS occur, quote, when there is an act of entering into or purporting to enter into transactions with no intent to obtain a bona fide market position or activity that gives the false appearance of an executed transaction, but does not subject the principal to any market risk or change in position or aid in price discovery, end of quote. On IFIS, anyone who initiates, places, accepts, or accommodates a transaction that he or she knew or should have known would result in a wash trade will violate the exchange's prohibition against wash trades. This could potentially include brokers that accept and execute a potential wash trade. In mid-July, a model law for the regulation of virtual currency businesses was adopted by the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws for potential adoption by each of the states of the United States. The model law, known as the Uniform Regulation of Virtual Currency Business Act, proposes the regulation of all persons engaged in a, quote, virtual currency business activity, end of quote, absent an exemption. Among other things, such activity includes exchanging, transferring, or storing virtual currency with or on behalf of residents. Under the model law, virtual currency is any digital representation of value that is used as a medium of exchange, unit of account, or store of value, and does not constitute legal tender. The proposed law would not apply to transactions subject to certain federal laws, for example, the Securities Exchange Act or the Commodity Exchange Act, or to activity by certain persons. These persons include a person that uses virtual currency solely for its own behalf, including investing and buying and selling, and regulated securities or commodities intermediaries that do not engage, quote, in the ordinary course of business, end of quote, in virtual currency business activities with residents. Persons engaged in business with residents whose volume of virtual currency business exceeds $35,000 US annually must have a license issued under the model law. A lesser registration requirement is proposed for persons whose volume of virtual currency business with residents is $35,000 US or less, but more than $5,000 US. Licensees and registrants must comply with a host of requirements, including maintaining certain requisite policy and procedures. They may be subject to minimum financial requirements, and they will be subject to state inspections and enforcement actions. Regulated virtual currency businesses will be required to hold sufficient virtual currency in each type to cover their note aggregate obligations to their customers in each type. The model law has not yet been finalized, although it has been approved. A final model law should be issued by year end, after which the states can consider it for adoption. And finally, 3 U.S. banking regulators determined that banks could avoid severe capital charges when entering into clear derivatives transactions by treating variation margin payments as settlement payments as opposed to collateral payments, provided exchange rules authorize such treatment. Such rules would enable banks to regard each derivatives contract as having no outstanding exposure on a clear contract after a variation margin payment is made until the next change of variation margin, for example, the next business day. This substantially reduces the bank's theoretical future exposure on the contract, reducing its capital charge. By the way, the measure of futures exposure is dependent on the type of contract and its remaining maturity. The 3 banking regulators making this determination were the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Well, that's it for this week's edition of Bridging the Week. As always, there's more information in each article and more articles on the article version of Bridging the Week on the website. Check it out. I'm Gary DeWaal. Have a great week, and until the next edition of Bridging the Week, ciao.